Hi there, my name is George Buza, and I'm the voice of Beast on X-Men the Animated Series, as well as X-Men 97, coming your way sometime next year. And I'd like to welcome you to Toy Quest 101.
And I'm so excited to have you on the show, another member of the X-Men on Toy Quest 101. It is an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you for coming on, George. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's great to be here. Look forward to answering some questions and having some fun.
Yeah, man, we're definitely going to have some fun. But before we start, we want to remind everybody to subscribe to Toy Quest 101 and don't forget to hit that notifications bell so that you don't miss any toy reviews, statue unboxings, or any celebrity guests that might pop up on our show like we have today. So we definitely want to get into the X-Men animated series. But before we do, I want to get to know you a little bit more and have our audience know you a little bit more. I want to get into some of the amazing work you have done prior. And if you don't mind telling us a little bit more about yourself and your background in acting.
Well, that goes back about 52 years. When I started acting, I did my apprenticeship in Cleveland, Ohio at Great Lakes Shakespeare Festival. And funny enough, one of the guys that I apprenticed with way back then, it turned out to be Freddy Krueger. Robert Englund was in the cast as well.
What?
Yes. I did my apprenticeship. He was my mentor. He had just gotten his equity card a year or two before that. And that was 1971 when I did my apprenticeship to Actors Equity Association. And then I got my equity card. I did some graduate work at Kent State University, and then I went down and got my equity card at Trumpet in the Land, which is a huge outdoor spectacle of Southern Ohio that deals with the historical founding of Ohio, and that was written by Graham Greene, also a very famous writer, Drums Along the Mohawk. And then things brought me up to Canada here. I got offered a tour, and that tour was written by none other than Des McAnuff, who wrote Jersey Boys, Tommy. So these were all people that I was running into at the very beginning of my career and the beginning of theirs. And then I did theater for a good number of years here in Toronto until I found my way into television and film. One of the very first big films that I did was Quest for Fire, which was that caveman drama that starred Ron Perlman. And that took us all over the world. We filmed that in Africa and Scotland, all over Canada. And then the movie industry just started taking off, and I did a whole bunch of really interesting things. Meatballs 3, and then a lot of TV series. I was on Maniac Mansion playing a 4-year-old mutant kid. And then The Adventures of Sinbad, which we shot down in South Africa for a couple of years. And then from there, I went on to do another series for Disney called Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, working with Peter Scolari as the mad scientist.
Yes.
And I was the guy that lived next door, in whose hands everything that the guy invented blew up.
Yeah. Love it. Love it.
I spent an awful lot of time standing in front of an air can and having vegetables and other slime things having fired at me. And then at the same time that I was doing Maniac Mansion, which was the very early 90s, I got the audition call to come in and read for this animated series called Project X, because it was top secret at the time. And I remember when the very first X-Men comic book came out. It was about 1962 or 1963. And it was right next to the comic books that I used to read, Superman. And I picked it up and I saw it, and it was very interesting. And I read a couple of the issues. But enough of it stuck with me that when I was reading the audition sides, I went, Project X, this is X-Men.
Yes.
And
yes. So your
I was
childhood.
one of the very few people yeah, it was like one of those things that the things that you were reading about as a kid, all of a sudden you're getting to play as an adult in your own profession. And the same thing held true when I got the job of playing Chief Chirpa on the Land of the Ewoks. I had seen Star Wars, and it was one of those movies that literally you walked the wrong way when you left the theater. You were just so overwhelmed by what you'd seen. And again, to have the opportunity to play a character that had been one of those fantasy things in your life come true was just amazing. And so there, I've been a very lucky performer, being able to work most of my life, and having had a family and a whole thing. It's just it's been a really good ride, like I have to admit.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of work that you've done prior to the X-Men, and I guess that comes to our next question, right? So you got Project X in your hand. Your childhood kind of took over, right? Because you read comic books as a child versus some of the other voice actors that didn't know what the X-Men were.
They had no idea. No.
They had no idea. You were one of the very few, if not the only one, who kind of had a hint at what it was and kind of guessed it out. But how was it getting that call to do this? I mean, I know you touched a little bit on how you read comics as a kid, but how excited were you to do it? I know there was some.
I was blown away, absolutely blown away. The fact that I did recognize what it was, I knew this was something really big. This was as big, if not bigger, than Land of the Ewoks, because there never been an X-Men series in Canada. Well, there was, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Paul Soules did an early version of X-Men. He played, I think, Spider-Man, maybe. This goes way, way back. But anyways, the excitement was overwhelming. And when I finally got the part and we started recording, it was an amazing thing. And we did the very first episodes just the same way as you would do radio drama. All of us were in the same studio. We all had our own mics, and we did it on each other's cues. So you were being fed the cues in real time. But it became very, very tedious because the feedback from the other microphones, this is 30 years ago. So they didn't have the same technology that they have today. And so they'd have to mute everybody's mic when the next person spoke. And that kind of killed the spontaneity of everything. So you couldn't really actually feed off the person's line before you. You had to wait 10 seconds. They turned off the mics. They brought your mic up live. And then the level might not have also always been right either. So there was a lot of adjustments being made, and it became very tedious. And then they switched to smaller groups where if you had an intimate scene with somebody, then they would bring 2 or 3 of you into the studio. Otherwise, you did all your lines individually. And it was which is the way that animation is always done.
Right.
Very seldom do you have an entire group in a studio. Even to this day, we're all recording individually.
So,
but of course, we have this. So all our directors who are 3,000 miles away in LA are watching us on the screen, and we're watching them on our screens. And it's in the old days, they were sitting in the studio with us. Somebody had to actually fly up from LA and then sit in the studio to oversee the production. And then they would confer via telephone with the people in the studios in Los Angeles, and you'd have to wait again. A very time-consuming process, which today is it's completely different. They're right there. and we're recording in the very same studios we did the original series in as well, which is
wow.
To have been back in the same studio. I mean, not in front of the same mic, but we had the same engineer. So it was one of those mind-blowing things too, that 30 years later, there you are back in the same venue that you were with the same guy doing the recording.
That's awesome. So speaking of the X-Men animated series, right? And obviously this guy right here, Ileana, why don't you ask your question?
How did you come up with the voice we know today as Beast?
So that's a good question. How did you come up when you saw this character and you read the script and or the the explanation of who the character is? How did you come up with that voice and match it with this guy's face right here?
Well, we were coached in our voices too. I mean, I knew that the character of Beast was somebody who was very smart, highly educated. He was a doctor. The fact that he looked blue and this huge muscular creature was what he was fighting against. That was the disability that was handed him as a mutant. So he had to make that an asset, which is what always people who are dealt some kind of a bad hand have to do. And that's find a way to take something negative and turn it into something positive. And I drew a lot on my own experiences as a kid, because when I was growing up, I was always the fat kid in class. It was the 1950s, and to say the least, my parents dressed me as a nerd. So I had that to deal with as well. And then being the big kid, there were always somebody that wanted to take you on. So I had to constantly talk my way out of fights, which was also something that Beast always did. Mm-hmm. He would always try and defuse a situation before we'd resort to his obvious power.
Yeah, the voice of reason.
And this is something that I had to deal with every day as a kid, because the schoolyard was not a friendly place for me. It wasn't a place I enjoyed being very much. And there was always somebody there that would want to pick on me for some reason. Of course, I was the fat kid, dressed like a dork. So there was that. And these were all things that we drew upon. So when you looked at Beast and you saw his the fact that he was a blue guy, but he was also a very intelligent doctor. So these were the things that you had to draw upon. And when looking for the voice, they wanted our own voices. They didn't want any cartoonisms, no squeaky, cartoony voices. They wanted the real thing. This was a real show. And it wasn't necessarily for kids. It was also aimed at an adult population who identified with the characters. And we've heard over and over again from kids who'd watched the show in their teens to say that without our show, they might not be here today.
Oh, absolutely.
They identified so much with the characters and the topics that we discussed every week that they found refuge in that. And that was one of their sole refuges. They would rush home at the end of the week and turn on the TV on Saturday morning and be glued to the TV set and just devour everything that we were working for.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing I could tell you. I mean, I grew up with the X-Men animated series, and that's something that took a big part of my life. And I know now it's a little different because now you're going to Comic-Cons and everything's so like viral and out there with social media. But how do you feel now that you knowing you still have this huge fandom of people who love the X-Men and they go up to you at cons now because you've been actually attending some of the cons and people are now getting to match the face of the person and the character? And what are they? What's your feedback? Like, are you surprised with the amount of people that go up to you and be like, man, you were my childhood hero. I love you.
Well, originally I was, yeah.
So how did that feel?
Originally, we never even knew. Well, it feels fabulous. But we had no idea at the time of doing the very first series how popular the show was. They kept that a secret. From what I understand from Julia and Eric, there were piles of mail in these bins, all lining the studios of Fox and Fox TV that they never shared with us. We had no idea that we were that popular. All we cared about really at the time was that, are we getting renewed? Are we doing another season? Do we have a job next year? These are the only reinforcements we ever got was, well, we must be doing okay because we're back. And we did the full 5 seasons that's required to go to syndication. So we knew that we had achieved that and we were being watched, but never, ever did we get any feedback from the company about how popular the show really was, how much mail they were getting that never reached our ears at all. And it wasn't until I did the very first Comic-Con, it was the original X-Men reunion down in New Braunfels, Texas, that people would come up to the desk and tell us what we meant to them and how much the show meant to their lives and their mental well-being. And it was overwhelming. I mean, I had people that came up and they would actually cry. That, I mean, we're just ordinary guys, there's nothing. All we were doing was our job. But it's the writers that came up with the meat that we got to say. And all we did was interpret it. But a lot of the kudos has to go to the people that put together that show and the storylines and created these characters that we were given the opportunity and the privilege to portray.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, I can't imagine, you playing this role back, in the 90s and now coming into this storm of fandom and the Comic-Cons and people actually now getting to tell you face to face how they feel. I mean, like I said before, it's something special for me because not only did I grow up with it, in the 90s, and that was like my thing, I love the X-Men. That's what got me into the comic books. That's what got me into, the world that I'm in now. But now with Disney and stuff, now she, another generation is introduced to what you did, your work and the writer's work back from the 90s. And now she's a fan. And, obviously we got the privilege to, have some of the other cast members and writers on our show and now with you. And it's been amazing, obviously, for both of us. So you got two fans from two different generations, appreciating your work. And it's just awesome. So my next question is this, because, we talked about Beast, how you came up with the voice. Now, one of my favorite episodes was Beauty and the Beast on the X-Men. And this episode, it showed Beast in love. And for the first time, having the chance to finally feel human and really step out of the character we've seen every day on the show. So he dealt with a lot of racism, hate groups, and a lot of things that people today deal with going into interracial relationships. Talk to us a little bit about that episode and what it meant to you.
Well, as an actor, it meant a great deal because as a character actor, you don't get to play a lot of those tender moments. So that was very fulfilling to be able to portray those emotions and to bring those feelings to life for a character who usually held a gun and, did bad things, rode motorcycles around. And it was a very, very tender episode. And it is my favorite episode as well. And the sacrifice that he makes at the end of having to let her go for her own safety. And, that was a very, very touching moment that, and we're so grateful that we got to play that because both of us, both Carly and I, we were good friends. Cara Lee is the actress that played that. And, we were both very, very touched by the emotions that we got to play.
Yeah, it was definitely one of my favorite episodes, and it was really a good focus on the character as Beast and focused on things that he was fighting with internally. And I think that was just a great opportunity for you as a voice actor to really demonstrate, the human factor behind Beast and the things that he was dealing with. And it was tough, but a lot of people could relate to it. X-Men brought a lot of topics that other cartoons didn't want to touch, other TVs, shows didn't want to touch. You guys touched it on an early age and executed in such a great way that it related with a lot of fans. And this is why I'm excited for X-Men 97, because I can't wait to see what else they could do now that they, in a sense, have a little bit more permission to do stuff like that. But I think these characters, especially like a storyline like this, really resonated with a lot of viewers. And I think that was, for me, when I remember Beast in the X-Men animated series, this is probably one of the episodes that stood out for me the most. I think it was brilliantly done. It was very emotional. It was touching. I mean, everything. You hear it in your voice. I mean, it's just like it felt so real in a sense. And I think you did an amazing job. And, me and Eliana were talking about it, and, your voice is so Shakespearean and majestic. And it's just like, it's so nice, So it was cool.
Well, a lot of us had theater backgrounds.
Yes. Yep.
And I was at the Great Lakes Shakespeare Festival in my apprentice years, and then I did Stratford here in Canada. So, and I did the role of Falstaff. That was also on my resume from the past. But theater gave us the best groundwork to do just about anything else in this business. And I think for any actor who's worth his salt, a background in theater is, I would say, essential.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Sometimes I really regret having given theater a back seat. Like, I haven't done an onstage performance now since 1986. I just found my home in film and television, and somehow I just got so far away from it that I wouldn't even consider it now.
Right.
The idea of memorizing all that dialogue and having no safety net.
I know that takes a lot of talent, man. Like, I get
Oh yeah, it does.
Yeah,
it does.
It's amazing.
One of the most difficult shows to memorize was Waiting for Godot.
Oh, Waiting for Godot.
That was I did Pozzo and Waiting for Godot, because none of the lines are a direct response to the one before. Like in any kind of other theater play, you're actually providing the dialogue provides an actual progression, that even if you lose your lines, as long as you know the story, you can find your way back. But in Waiting for Godot, everything was non sequitur. Every line came out of nowhere unless you knew it absolutely perfectly.
Wow.
It really wouldn't make sense.
Right. I mean, listen, I hand it to everybody that does that type of work. It's amazing. But let me test out your knowledge. Do you remember? Can you quote for me the line that Beast did in The Jury when he was pleading his?
Well, that's directly taken from the Merchant of Venice. If you prick us, do we not bleed? I can't remember the exact dialogue, but
no, that was it though. That's the line,
that's
and
correct.
Yeah.
Line for line, it's directly out of Merchant of Venice.
That's awesome. You knew exactly what I was talking about. It's such a great line. I mean, Beast had so many great quotes and things that he said.
Well, they gave him a great gimmick, and that just before he laid waste to somebody, he could find some sort of obscure poetry to quote them, and then he'd go to town.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of neat. And actually, one of the lines that they made up was totally fictional. So they actually made a poet up. But this was all revealed to us during the course of panels and the Comic-Cons, and Eric and Julia being present. And they actually had the writer who did Beauty and the Beast at some of the cons. And she was very helpful in giving the background to how the stories came about.
That's awesome.
So we're just as much enthralled with these Comic-Cons now as ever. I'd never done one before the original reunion when Eric and Julia came out with their book. And they thought it would be a great idea to get as many of us as they could find to come down to the New Braunfels and be on a panel. And that was our first introduction. And I was hooked immediately. It was almost like the first time I was on stage, and I went, oh, well, this is what I want to do.
That's awesome.
Because as an older actor now, I'm not really that interested in doing 16-hour days on a movie set anymore, and killing myself. I was on Ginny in Georgia, and I had a very small part in that. I played George's lawyer, or Ginny's lawyer, whichever. Yeah, I don't know. But I thought I was done, and then they called me back last year and said, "Oh, we need you again for another day." And I thought, "Geez, I thought I was done with that." And it turned out it was a night shoot, exterior, at the end of February.
Ooh.
In Canada, that is like the triple threat of like stepping in dog poo. It's going to be colder than
very
which
cold.
is what out there.
Yeah.
And I'm reading the script, and she's out there in her t-shirt, and my character has to take off his jacket and put it around her shoulders. I go, well, one of us is freezing, or both of us, because as it turned out, it was like 20 below, and we were all freezing. So that's...
Yeah. I mean, listen, going to Comic-Con and stuff takes a lot of work, flights and all that stuff. And, just recently, a couple of weeks ago, we finally got to meet in person, my favorite X-Men, Cal Dodd. We surprised him, and we basically hung out with him the entire day. And it was I never would have thought in a million years that I would be talking to him to begin with during our interviews, then yet alone finally meet him in person. And man, what an amazing guy. And I hope that one day we could do the same with you and the rest of the cast.
Well, you never know where we're going to show up. Where are you guys located?
So we're in Jersey. We're near New York. We're near Philadelphia. He was at a Baltimore Comic-Con, and we took the drive and we surprised him, and he was so happy. And I'm so happy we did it. Like we learned about it last minute, and we just took off. And I mean, we do help a lot of artists or actors sometimes set up things out here on our side, since we're big in the community out here. So I mean, if you're ever down, you got our information. We'll be happy to help. Just like we told Julie and them, and I hope we do get to meet.
We were supposed to do a show in Jersey just before the pandemic, and then it got canceled.
Yeah, they told us. Yeah,
but I think we're slated to sometime do New York.
Yeah.
So that would be somewhere.
You have to be. I mean, with X-Men 97, I can't imagine that's not going to be big. It's going to be huge. They're going to want you guys over there. I actually tried to set them up with them. But yeah, man, if you're out here, we're definitely going to come and watch out.
Well, that would be really cool.
Yeah.
Because it's really great to meet these people wherever we go, and you never know where we're going to show up.
Yeah.
We were just in Grand Rapids a couple of weeks ago. That was kind of neat. I'd never been there before.
Gotcha.
Been to Kalamazoo, but not Grand Rapids.
Well, we'll be excited to definitely meet you. But we're coming to the end to our show. So we wanted to play a little game with you. And it's movie quotes with Beast. So I thought it would be fun if we could get some quotes from you from very famous, popular, and
I printed them out.
Go ahead and tell them in your Beast voice.
With the old actor Pink highlight. So
let's do the first one. So the first one is Gone with the Wind.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Yo, let's go. Okay. All right. The second one is Dirty Harry from 1971.
You've got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
Let's go. All right. This is from Forrest Gump. Oh, I'm sorry. This is from Avengers-Infinity War.
Dread it. Run from it. Destiny still arrives.
That was Thanos. So that's awesome to hear it in the Beast voice. Let's do Forrest Gump.
My mama always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
Let's go. All right, The Sandlot.
You're killing me, Smalls.
Yeah, let's go. All right. A League of Their Own.
There's no crying in baseball.
Let's go. All right, this is definitely
the biggie. I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want. If you are looking for ransom, I can tell you I don't have money. But what I do have are a very particular set of skills. Skills I have acquired over a very long career. Skills that make me a nightmare for people like you. If you let my daughter go now, that'll be the end of it. I will not look for you. I will not pursue you. But if you don't, I will look for you. I will find you, and I will kill you.
Let's go. That's Taken. That's Liam Nielsen. All right. Let's get an Avengers quote in there.
Avengers, assemble.
Ooh. Imagine Beast leading the Avengers. Okay. Another good quote. Gladiator.
My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, commander of the armies of the North, general of the Felix Legions, and loyal servant to the true emperor Marcus Aurelius, father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance in this life or the next.
Let's go. All right. Last one. Another one of my favorites. This is from Braveheart.
Run and you'll live, at least for a while. And dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all? And this is where it gets a little dicey. All the days from this day to that, for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom.
Let's go. That is awesome, man. Thank you so much. Listen, what a cool thing to have Beast play the lines of these famous pop culture quotes there. So I really appreciate that. Our last question, we only have about 5 minutes. Now moving into X-Men 97, how excited are you? What are you looking for? And how different is it from, X-Men in the 90s?
Well, it's very exciting. We were all looking forward to seeing what the scripts were going to look like, because they promised us that it was going to pick up where we left off. And we were not disappointed. The writing is just as spectacular as it was back then. The stories are exciting. The action is nonstop, and they're just as much fun for us to do in our old age as it was when we were middle-aged. And even more so because we get to play the characters that we played so many years ago. And how many actors get a chance at that?
Yes.
There's an old saying that you start off and it is, well, let's get somebody like him, and then as you progress, they're not looking for you at all. They're looking for somebody who you used to be. And to get the chance to still be us almost 30 years later is a real joy.
Well,
I'm telling you, you're not going to be disappointed.
I'm so excited.
We've already got the first year in the can.
Yep.
And we've already been told we're renewed for a second season.
Let's go.
So these were all announcements that were made by Marvel at the Comic-Con in LA or in San Diego.
San Diego, yep.
Comic-Con in LA is happening right now, as a matter of fact. And Lenore is down there.
Yep.
And Larry and Eric and Julia are there as well. I was talking to Byron earlier today, and he told me that he went and visited them. And hopefully we'll be down there next year and having another reunion with the whole gang at Comic-Con in LA, because that was one that we really enjoyed.
It's a big one. Yeah. Well, listen.
It's not just that, but I got so many friends down in Los Angeles that I don't get to see.
Right.
And as soon as I land, I'm on the blower going, "Hey, I'm in town." And
I'm in town. Listen, I'm very excited for you guys. I'm happy that Marvel and Disney did the right thing by bringing you back on. We campaigned with Eric and Julia prior to the announcement, and then it happened. So we're excited to be a small part in this. And as fans, we want to thank you. We want to thank Marvel and Disney. We look forward to seeing you back on the big screen as our friend, the blue-eyed, the blue bird, right? Beast here. We love him to death. And we want to thank you for spending time with us and being on our show. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, Ileana and Miguel. I hope to see you guys again.
Yes.
And in person, hopefully sometime in New York. That would be terrific.
We would look forward to it. But Ileana, why don't you tell everybody where they can find us?
You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok.
And don't forget to subscribe to ToyQuest101. We'll see you on the next episode. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.